Hi, welcome back to the Recovery Daily Podcast. This is Rachel Miller. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor, and today I have a special Reads and Recovery episode lined up for you. I'm reviewing this month's book, and that is called The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober by Catherine Gray. So grab your non-alcoholic beverage, put on your dance clothes, and we'll get into it. If you read the book, you'll understand that Catherine is a big fan of getting on the dance floor. So here we go. So in The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober, Catherine Gray shares her candid and often humorous take on what it's like to live life on the sober side of the street. And this book made me proud. It made me really proud to be sober. It's like Gray is reminding us that choosing sobriety is like the new cool. And it's very much, she wrote this, it seems a couple years ago. I should have looked at that. But it's very much in line with what's going on, this big trend about dry January, and there's all these new bars that are opening up that are like non-alcoholic bars, and she's not wrong. I mean, it is cool to be sober. I think the challenging part is convincing people who are not sober that it is cool. But it takes a lot of courage to recover out loud and put your story out there and risk your reputation just to lift others up. And I really applaud her for that. It's a big deal, especially, these people who are a little more highfalutin folks. I think it's pretty cool that they use their popularity or whatever, for lack of a better word, to reach people and help others. So that's something that is very much a part of my sobriety program. So Gray's optimism, I think, is very obvious throughout the book. It almost paints a life of alcohol, paints the life after alcohol as like a bed of roses. And that is obviously not the case. But I found like later in the book, it kind of felt that way. Like everything was fine. Like life just stops happening at that point, but life still happens. And yes, it's simple to say that we're just not drinking anymore. We're not going to pick up a drink anymore. But as soon as you add life and you hit play, you need some sort of program in order to manage life without the alcohol, because that's what it's all about. That's the difficult part, is putting down the drink and still living, a full life, a full and joyful life. So it is simple, but it's not easy. It's straightforward, but it can open up a lot of wounds in the process, and that can be quite painful. And, difficult. It can be difficult, but the steps are easy, So one thing I'll say, though, is that the author really loves her lists. Loves lists. We've got lists for just about everything sober related in this book. And while the lists are chock full of good stuff, my attention would sometimes just wane with each new list that was presented in the book. I don't know if it's because of my new cognitive challenges because of my stroke, but every time a new list started and she'd say, number one, I just would start drifting. I don't know, it stopped being conversational and started being something that I felt like I had to take notes or something like that. And I didn't really care for that. It was okay the first time. Then the second time was still acceptable. But by the time we got to the third list, I was like, all right, the lists have to stop. And they just kept going. I don't know if she had like 10 lists or something that were numbered, 1, 2, 3. And that kind of got old for me. But listening to her experiences, I couldn't help but have a touch of envy when she was talking about her career because she was writing for these top magazines and it seems like really rubbing elbows with some celebrities or at least some people pretty high up and but it's a necessary reminder. I'm glad that she did share about that, even though it came across to me as bragging. I think it was coming across to me like that because I was envious. I don't think she was actually bragging. It was just my perception of it. And and I think it was a good reminder that alcohol doesn't discriminate and it can take opportunities of a lifetime, like what she had. I mean, and just turn them into dust. And that's something that I have felt as well. And I have been recounting all my missed opportunities due to my drinking because of this book. And I was thinking about it and I thought, I think my drinking set me back in my career about 20 years. If I were to bet, I think that I was pushed back about 20 years. So I feel like I would have gone a lot further. But we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. So moving forward. The author's story felt extremely familiar to my own. It echoed my own struggles with work, with relationships, and that relentless craving for alcohol. And it's really tough to find a comparison for that fixation. People talk about, oh, it's like if I put a chocolate on the table and you had to just keep walking by it and never pick it up. It's way more than that. I don't think any of that holds up a candle to an alcoholic's obsession with alcohol. And I've talked to people who are not alcoholics and they've been, recently I went to dinner with a woman who asked me, what's it like? What's it like to be an alcoholic, to be obsessed with alcohol? What does that feel like? And I was explaining it to her, and she was just like, I just can't imagine feeling that way. So it was cool. It was cool to have somebody interested in the real stuff that happens underneath our skin and in our minds. So but it's not all heavy in the book. I think the author weaves in, for me, a couple laugh out loud anecdotes, but they are alongside some pretty gut wrenching ones. And I think she finds a good balance that allows me to see myself in her story, and kind of there were several times I was listening because remember I'm listening on Audible because of my eyes, but I was just nodding along so much, probably throughout the whole book. I was just like, yep, totally, yep. And I think that the fact that she adds some humor in there reminds us that it's okay to look back and smile at some of that chaos that we navigated through before we got sober. And I know that for the newcomer or somebody who's analyzing their own relationship with alcohol, it's hard to walk in, especially if you're in a point of desperation, if you're really finding that you may need to stop drinking because you're reaching a low. It's hard to see people laughing about it. It's hard to walk into an AA meeting and see a bunch of people laughing when you feel like you're dying on the inside. And you are. I mean, you are dying on the inside, literally, because you're poisoning yourself. And I know that that's it's a difficult step. It takes a lot of courage to do that. But it's also a nice example to newcomers that if you want what we have, stay here. Stay here, and you can also be laughing too. You know, if you will love you until you love yourself, all that good stuff. Believe me, I was crying throughout the entire first year, into the second year. And I still cry. I still cry after 7 years, but I certainly don't cry like I used to. I used to cry every time I opened my mouth. So, for those of you who are sober curious, as they say these days, this book is definitely helpful. All of those lists that were annoying me, they do have a lot of good information and tools to help you clean up your act if you're interested. Some of the things that she touches on, some of the like transformational parts of getting sober. She talks about how the first time she went to a dance club when she was sober and how scary that was. And she talked about what it was like afterwards to start dancing sober. And I found it really heartwarming. A bit she talks about with her dad and her dancing. So if you read the book, that part was probably my favorite part. It was a feel-good part. She also talks a bit about I think her self-image probably changed a bit as she adjusted her wardrobe when she entered into sobriety. And I could really relate to that in that I started trying to dress a bit more professional. I guess that sobriety gave me a feeling of like polishing my life and giving me purpose and wearing age appropriate stuff. And I got so excited to get dressed in the morning. I would even, and those of you who know me, Google my outfits, and I had a color wheel and everything because it was just another way of me stepping into my day and looking forward to it and entering into the world and just being ready, I was suiting up, right? That's what I say a lot in my sobriety is you need to suit up and show up. That's what I was doing. I was suiting up, and I was trying to put on, put on the clothes of the person that I wanted to be, and it followed. It just did for me. She talks a lot about going to these nightclubs, and that's probably one of the things that I did not relate to, but I think that has a lot to do with where she lived and where I lived and who we associated with more than anything. But I can totally see me doing the nightclub thing if that was prevalent in my area. So she does acknowledge the various roads to sobriety that exist, and while AA has been my lifeline, I do appreciate that she gives a nod to the myriad of ways people find their sober footing. And it's all about what works for you. So there, then there's her heart-tugging honesty about the pain of the pain her addiction inflicted on those that she loves. And she talks about the impact on her family, specifically her parents, and the unconditional love that they offered. It was poignant and relatable. It's one of those things that hits you when you, I think I've been sober for several months, for me, where you finally realize, oh my God, what have I done to my family? You know? And so I was glad that she touched on that, because there are a lot of deep connections that survive that storm of addiction, but there are a lot that don't. And I know that I have some that almost didn't. I have some friendships that did not last. And I'm super grateful that my relationship with my boyfriend did. But I know that I put an enormous amount of strain on that. And I'm lucky, I'm one of the lucky ones. So, wrapping up, the unexpected joy of being sober for me was like sitting in an AA meeting and listening to someone share their story. That's what it was like for me. It was raw, it was real, and it was totally relatable. So on my new Weimaraner and Bulldog scale, that's right, the Reads and Recovery Review has a scale that is called the Weimaraner and Bulldog scale. And I'll read you the details of that in just a moment. But on the Weimaraner and Bulldog scale, I am giving this book a solid 3 woofs. It's engaging, it's enjoyable, and most importantly, it's honest, and it's a solid read. So that's 3 woofs on the 5-point scale. So let me explain to you what the Weimaraner and Bulldog scale is. I wanted to have a creative way to rate these books. And so this is what we came up with. We've got a 5-level scoring for our Reads and Recovery books. We have a 1 bark, and that is a not really engaging, but had a couple of interesting moments. There is 2 wags, which is a pleasant read with some enjoyable parts. 3 woofs, which was our book of the month, and that's engaging, enjoyable, and a solid read. We have 4 paws, and that means I really loved this book, and it was hard to put down. And finally, we have 5 tail wags, and that means the book was an all-time favorite, and it resonated deeply on a personal level. So that was 1 bark, 2 wags, 3 woofs, 4 paws, and 5 tail wags. And this month's book gets 3 woofs. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this. I hope this book finds your way onto your bookshelf or your Audible library if it hasn't yet. Specifically, if you are taking a look at your own relationship with alcohol, I think this book is the perfect resource for that. So next month's Reads and Recovery book is called Dry, a Memoir by Augustin Burroughs. And there is information on my website at recoverydailypodcast.com. Just go to the top and click on Reads, and there's all your information about this awesome Reads and Recovery program. So thank you for participating. Thanks for joining me today, and I will talk to you tomorrow, my friends.